Thank you for joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, and the KIDO Talk Radio app. Today is September 11th. Today we remember the fallen. Today we thank God that we live in America. Today we remember the post-September 11th world. America was free. A new president had been elected. George W. Bush had avenged the loss of his father to Bill Clinton, and the world was at peace. President Bush was hanging out, reading stories to little children at a school. And then tragedy hit. Then the world was changed forever. And we've all been changed forever. Coming up this hour, because of this, this is, and it's funny, we say to ourselves, this is a difficult subject to talk about. Try living it, right? Try being in those towers on Flight 93. We're going to honor Todd Beamer and those brave Americans. You know, if you remember that day, and if not, I urge you to go get some books, some DVDs, and everything else. And how many of us could imagine being on that plane? By the way, a very famous writer, Barbara Olson, her husband, Ted Olson, either was or eventually became the Solicitor General of the United States, which means that he represented America at the Supreme Court when we were sued or what have you in the World Court. And so she gets on her phone and tells her husband, man, something's going on here. And remember all those phone calls from people, right? Telling their loved ones, I don't think I'm coming home. You want to talk about courage, empathy. You want to share with yourself the sheer humanity of that situation, the evilness and the wickedness of the 19 hijackers. And why do we have a CIA? Why do we have an FBI? Why do we have things? And this is where I disagree with people. You know, Israel profiles people. Quite frankly, I still think that we do profile people, but heaven forbid that we would be caught doing this, because that would be politically incorrect, right? We've got to make sure that this never happens again. Never forget, never, ever forget. And I want to share with you a montage that was put together many years ago. Now, I warn you that this montage is very dramatic, not in a theatric sense, but in a real sense, because this happened in real time. And like I said, today, no calls. It's a day of prayer. It's a day of remembrance. It's a day to thank God that we live in America and we had such courageous Americans that paid the ultimate price, right? Here on KIDO Talk Radio.
Say again. Executive 956, did you understand that transmission?
Yeah, that transmission he said was unreasonable. It sounded like someone said they have a bomb on board.
Sir, did you hear the transmission where the airplane that said he had a bomb on board?
Affirmative, he said there was a bomb on board.
That's what we thought. We just we didn't get it clear.
That aircraft you can't get a hold of, has he turned to the east now?
He's just turned to the east also.
Okay, 956, we had a visual on him. Just stand by.
Do you have a visual on him now?
We did, but we lost him at the turn.
If you can make a turn back to a 220 heading, let me know if you can see him.
They were making a turn at 956.
Negative, we're 30 northwest of you.
We're looking now, sir.
Okay, American 1060 and Executive 956, we just lost the target on that aircraft.
Man, Z100 852. Something weird is going on.
Yeah.
The World Trade Center is on fire.
Oh my Seriously, the top of the building. We're trying to get information.
Top level of one of the
news to unfold from New York City.
A plane crashed. Just
my sister's in that building.
Okay.
And I hope she's okay. And I gotta run to New York.
Oh my God! It's complete pandemonium.
First of all, calm down.
There's raining papers and ashes and...
People are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows.
A second plane has now flown in.
Wait, explosion at the Pentagon?
A third location outside of New York and outside of Washington.
I don't have words to describe what I'm witnessing right now.
Effective immediately until further notice, flight operations in the national airspace system by United States civil aircraft and foreign civil and military aircraft are prohibited.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
On itself, and it is.
It just landed on Manhattan.
All right, so now we look back up to the TV. One of the World Trade Towers has collapsed and fallen.
I've never seen anything like this.
I've got 5 patients. They need to be. We got an ambulance full of cops and pedestrians. Building just collapsed. We don't have much more. I got another tower that just came down. All the cops away from the building. You got a female officer down. Female officer, where are you now, King? Where are you, King? Where are you?
We're not going to be stopped. We're not going to be deterred. We're not going to stay at home. We're not going to be frightened. We're going to live our lives as Americans.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
We're all brothers. We all got to stick together.
One nation, under God, indivisible.
My God, look at the skyline without the towers.
It is Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. This is Glenn Beck. Dateline, New York. In one of the most audacious attacks ever, terrorists hijacked 2 airliners, crashed them into the World Trade Center in a coordinated series of blows today that brought down the twin 110-story towers. Thousands may be dead. 58,000 people work at the World Trade Center.
Sean, it's me. I just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building. I'm waiting at the building where Mom went off. I don't know, but there's lots of smoke, and we just wanted you to know that I love you.
One plane, United Flight 93, crashed north of Somerset County Airport, a small airport 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. United said that flight, Boeing 757, left Newark at 8:01, headed for San Francisco with 38
Just know that will prevail.
We will not turn.
It is as old as the scriptures.
We will not falter.
And is as clear.
And we will not fail.
As the American Constitution.
That is the news of this day, September 11th, 2001.
Is that United 93? Is that United 93 calling? United 93, United 903. United 93. Is that United 93?
There we have it, put together by our friend Glenn Beck. The sounds of that day. Amazing how time has flown from 2001 to 2019. Many Americans, many people throughout the world will go about their day, but you won't, and others won't as well. You know, we talked about earlier this new book that is coming out about the oral history of September 11th. Major Dan Kane, F-16 pilot, D.C. Air National Guard, Andrews Air Force Base, saying, I handed our wing commander the phone to talk to the high levels of government to get the rules of engagement. The vice president saying it had to be done. Once the plane became hijacked, even if it had a load of passengers on board who obviously weren't part of any hijacking attempt, having seen what happened in New York and the Pentagon, you really didn't have any choice. It wasn't a close call. Matthew Waxman, that really grabs you by the collar when you hear the vice president giving the order to shoot down an unidentified aircraft flying towards the nation's capital. That stands out as one of the most frightening moments of the day, partly because it highlighted the sense of continuing danger. There was also the realization of the enormous dilemmas that face decision makers at the moment with very little time and imperfect information. People that worked at the Capitol were told to run. And as we've seen on television or in person or what have you, that beautiful rotunda, it was feared would be destroyed along with others in it. Commander Anthony Barnes saying, I knew without a doubt in my mind that was a historical precedent, that never before had we given permission to shoot down a commercial airliner. I got back on the phone. It was a general of some sort in the Pentagon, and on the secure line I was talking on, made sure that he understood that I had posed the question to the national authority, that would be the vice president, and the answer was in the affirmative. We made sure that we did not stutter or stumble because the emotion at that point was very, very high. Fortunately, we didn't have to use that authority because of the courage of Todd Beamer and others, of Let's Roll. We remember his beautiful wife, Mary Beamer. Let's roll. That spirit continues today. And we will continue to remember September 11th. What were you doing? And it's our mission. It's our mission to remind the young people that this is America and this is what happened to us. And we must never, ever, within all our power, let that happen to us again. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you for starting your day with us. Kevin Miller here, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, the KIDO Talk Radio app. September 11th, a very important day. You know, some people say it should be a holiday. I don't know if it should be a holiday because, let's face it, what has become of Memorial Day and Veterans Day? Of course, Memorial Day, people say, hey, thank you, everybody. Memorial Day is when we honor people that pay the ultimate sacrifice, right? So if we had the day off from work, September 11th, what would happen? You know, as people at Ground Zero are there, the relatives, the tears, would it all turn into just a giant retail day? Could we as adults actually honor and understand this? That's our attempt today, where we talk to you one-on-one, and maybe you can recall what happened and how you got through it. Remember, maybe people were afraid to go out. It was almost as if we were paralyzed with national fright, right? I can remember somebody saying to me, hey, you better not go to that place. I go, what? I'm with the veterans. I'm with the safest people in America today. And yet you had people that were paralyzed by the fear. That's not an accusation. That's not a condemnation. That's just how it happened. This had never happened before in American history, right?
The aircraft penetrated deep inside the Pentagon. It is organized in rings from the E ring on the outside. It penetrated all the way into the A ring in the inner part of the Pentagon.
The explosion is incredible! Oh my God!
Another plane, as we
I
were
don't
watching.
believe this! The second tower has exploded from about the 20 stories below in a gargantuan explosion.
More coming up next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. And you go to the Pentagon and what happened there. And just the audacity of this. And let's face it, the eyes of the world were changed forever. America was re-engaged. It was a crusade to find Osama bin Laden. It was a crusade to destroy Saddam Hussein. Yes, we can have the ramifications afterwards, but think of how many people served their country. How many people volunteered? Pat Tillman, all-pro, safety, cornerback with the Arizona Cardinals. He and his brother, they said, we're not going to make millions of dollars. We're going to enlist in the Army. They became Rangers, airborne Rangers, killed, unfortunately, in the line of duty. But it was more important. You know, the lessons of September 11th. The people say, perhaps that is dead, Kevin Miller. Perhaps we've become a nation of texting individuals, no longer united by a common good. I would disagree. I would disagree with that. I would disagree with that and that whole symbol. Now, again, these are sounds from September 11th, and we'll get your thoughts and prayers as we urge you to pray for those that were impacted and are continued impacted by this.
On September the 11th, great sorrow came to our country. From that sorrow has come great resolve.
We're not going to be stopped.
He said, "Are you ready?"
We're not going to be deterred. We're not going to stay at home.
This event can give a message
We're
of
not
hope.
going to be frightened.
Hope for the present.
We're going to live our lives.
And hope for the future.
As Americans.
And today we express our nation's sorrow.
They can't destroy America.
And this is going to be a day that we will remember.
Have to remember.
As a day of victory.
Each of us will remember what happened that day. Some will remember an image of a fire or a story of rescue. Some will carry memories of a face.
She blew out the candles and she made a wish.
And a voice gone forever.
And she said, "I wish that Daddy would visit us from heaven."
The heroism of the people up in the sky.
I said, "What do you think Dad's doing right now?"
My fellow Americans.
And she said,
"Let's roll."
"I think he's watching me blow out my candles."
And I will carry this. It is the police shield of a man named George Howard, who died at the World Trade Center trying to save others.
They know that their dad has been considered a hero.
It is my reminder of lives that ended.
They see a flag flying and they say, "Mom."
And a task that does not end.
That person's flying the flag for Daddy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
We have to cry.
Of the United States of America.
We have to mourn.
And to the republic for which it stands.
But we're all brothers.
One nation, under God, indivisible.
We all got to stick together.
Liberty and justice for all.
None of us will ever forget this day. We have suffered great loss. And in our grief and anger, we have found our mission and our moment. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence.
A moment of silence. That's the least that we can do. And I would ask you, by the way, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. I would just say to you, the least that we can all do today is to get on our knees and pray. You know, you hear those children who are now well into adulthood that grew up without a parent, maybe both parents. And yes, our world is not perfect. And that's the untold story, I think, of this day in our history, of the people on that plane in Flight 93. Now, many of us are afraid of roller coasters. Many of us are afraid of our own shadow. I would be one of them. And to know that you have to take these people down because they're going to get to the Capitol. They're going to destroy a symbol of liberty because of their hate. And you know it's not going to end well for you. But you do it anyway. You put the country ahead of yourself. Maybe that's what the media should be honoring today. Colonel Matthew Clemon. It was painful discussion for all of us. We didn't want the burden of shooting down the airliner to be on the shoulders of a single fighter pilot, but we also didn't want to have that pilot go all the way up to the chain of command to get permission to shoot. It was decided the pilots should do their best to wave the airplane off, and if it's clear the airplane is headed into a heavy populated area, the authority to shoot can be given to the regional commander. This sounds counterintuitive. When the magnitude of the situation hit me, I really lost all emotion. It was really much more focused on what are the things I need to do to enable us to protect our capital. What are the things that I need to do to facilitate us getting airborne? Lieutenant Heather Lucky Penny, F-16 pilot, D.C. Air National Guard. Think about that. Here you have that young lady making that decision. More next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Hope you're having a blessed day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Earlier we were talking about the call. What was the call that would allow the fighter pilots to possibly shoot down Flight 93 if it wasn't taken down by the brave passengers inside? This from Politico. Let's take a listen.
The Region Commander has declared that we can shoot down tracks that do not respond to our direction. Okay. I'll pass that to weapons. Okay. The Region Commander has declared that we can shoot down aircraft that do not respond to our direction. Copy that?
Copy that, sir.
So if you're trying to divert somebody and he won't divert...
Heo's saying no.
No? Came over the chat. Fox, you got a conflict on that? You got a conflict on that direction?
Right now, no. But
Okay. Hey,
okay.
You read that from the Vice President, right? Vice President has cleared.
Vice President has cleared us to intercept tracks. You know what they do is shoot them down if they do not respond first on RCC.
I can remember a few years later interviewing the Attorney General at the time, John Ashcroft, who almost was shot down because his plane was trying to get back to D.C. Going back to some of the oral history here of the fighter pilots, September 11th, we would be ramming the aircraft. This is from Heather Lucky Penny, the lieutenant. We didn't have missiles on board to shoot the airplane down. As we put on our flight gear in the life support shop, SAS looked at me and said, I'll ram the cockpit. I made the decision. I would take the tail off the aircraft. SAS saying, quote, we didn't have a lot of options. No missiles. Had they been trained? According to Heather Lucky Penny, I had never been trained to scramble the aircraft, mobilize. It would be typically take about 20 minutes to start the engines, get the avionics systems going. So going through the pre-flight checks to make sure the systems were operating properly, program the computers in the aircraft. That not even included the time it took to look at all the forms, do a walk around the plane and whatnot. We usually planned about a half an hour to 40 minutes from the time we walked from the door to the time we actually took off. And then you have the vice commander saying, we did everything humanly possible to get the aircraft in the air. Remember, this plane was heading towards D.C. It had turned around and it's on its way. People were nervous. People were making that decision. And then you had the idea that they didn't have missiles. Back to Heather Lucky Penny. SAS and I fully expected to intercept Flight 93 and take it down. SAS. I was going into this moral or ethical justification of the needs of the many versus the needs of the few. I genuinely believed that was going to be the last time I took off. If we did it, this would be it. Never before has this story been told, right? From the perspectives of those people that were charged with taking down Flight 93.
Yeah, hi. I'm on the 106th floor of the World Trade Center. We just had an explosion.
The 106th floor?
Yes.
106, okay.
We have smoke and it's pretty bad. We can't get down the stairs. All right. We had about 100 people up here.
Do not leave, okay? There's a fire or an explosion or something in the building. All right, I want you to stay where you are.
Yes.
All right, we're there. We're coming up to get you.
See the smoke coming up from outside the windows, Jeff?
All right, we're on the way. Just sit tight. All right, just sit tight. We're on the way.
All right, please hurry. Mom, it's Steven. My plane, my building got hit by a plane, and right now it's, I think I'm okay, I'm safe now, but it's smoky. I just want to say how much I love you, and I will call you when I'm safe. Okay, Mom? Bye.
I just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building in New York. There's lots of smoke, and I just wanted you to know that I love you always.
You know, there's a fire right there. I love you too. I love you. I don't know if I'm going to be okay here. I love you so much.
Calls from the World Trade Center from September 11th, 2001.
We are just currently getting a look at the World Trade Center. We have something that has happened here at the World Trade Center.
It's got to be a terrorist attack. I can't tell you anything more than that.
We had seen a fireball, and I can tell you it appears as though something has gone into the World Trade Center.
And then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the window.
It was chaos. It's something out of a movie.
Couldn't believe my eyes. I thought I saw a plane go into the other tower.
Today we have watched the tragedy of an outrageous act of barbaric terrorism.
They're jumping out the windows, I guess, because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know.
The whole side has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly. The second building that we witnessed the airplane enter.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward.
How badly are you hurt?
The whole building has collapsed on us.
I guess we didn't think that this could happen to us.
The second building has just come down. Second, everyone's being asked to get down.
It's unbelievable. She looked up and suddenly everything changed.
I saw the building fall down. Some people jumping from the building.
We just felt a big explosion.
On the 100th floor, and I saw the building just coming down.
The building came just rumbling down. It was like...
I saw the plane hit the building.
My heart bleeds for everybody there. Civilians, firefighters, police.
This is terrible. We lost tons of guys.
The victims were in airplanes, were in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, moms and dads, friends and neighbors.
Can't even look at it. I don't see a building. I see people. People hurt. Children without mothers and fathers tonight.
We all started running.
Everybody's bleeding.
We lost tons of guys.
People laying all over the floor. It's horrible.
I have no idea.
Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil.
We all started running.
I had just gotten out of the building. I was crossing the street when I heard some rumbling. I saw someone come off the top of the building. I just ran.
In these days, when darkness falls early, and people rush home to the ones they love, you better take a fool's advice and take care of your own. One day they're here, next day they're gone.
The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace.
It is unlike any we have seen, unlike perhaps any day we have seen since the beginning of World War II.
I don't know where I was. I couldn't find my way out with all the smoke and the debris in there. And I saw the building
Pearl
collapse.
Harbor and of Oklahoma City, which at the time we thought was the worst possible thing that could be done to this country in the way of terrorism. And now we have something far, far greater.
The head makes cloudy,
what makes very clear. You know, the days were so much brighter in the time when she was here. I know there's somebody somewhere make these dark clouds disappear. Until that day, I have to believe, I believe in a New York.
People are wonderful, and I mean this in the best sense of the word.
Couldn't help nobody. Couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
We've had thousands and thousands of people that have come to help us.
If you didn't have an oxygen tank, you couldn't even go in there.
It was unbelievable. This guy's still trapped. We couldn't get to him.
Anybody want to volunteer? What's the job in there?
Whatever it is, to save somebody, one person saved is the right save.
This is indeed the most tragic hour in America's history. And yet I think it can be its finest hour.
The resolve of our great nation is being tested. Make no mistake, we will show the world that we will pass this test.
And I hope that we did pass the test. Thank you, George W. Bush, now former President Bush. Kevin Miller with you here, KIDO Talk Radio. Again, remembering the fallen and their great contributions. You know, I go back to this dialogue that we've been sharing with you from the fighter pilots. I mean, we always assumed that our fighter pilot aircraft had missiles. And if you're just tuning in, we're reviewing some of the oral history of September 11th. You had fighter pilots that they were going to take themselves down. They were going to ram Flight 93 and make sure that it didn't harm anyone. Now, that didn't happen because, and there's been movies of people that have been trapped in the rubble of the World Trade Center. There have been other things. I can remember going to New York 3 weeks, or no, what was it, 3 weeks? Yeah, something like that. 3 weeks or a month before. I'd never been to New York in my life. A couple weeks or a couple of times before 9/11, I had a chance to be there a few times. And the enormity of the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center, after the bombing in 93, most people in that region, it was a New York thing. They loved it. You could go there, and unlike the Empire State Building, which would wiggle when you would go up, the World Trade Center was so solid, so wide. There was a mall underneath it. You had the window of the world's restaurant. You had Bear Stearns. You had the center of the financial world right there. And people loved it. You could go in and you wouldn't have to wait in line. The elevators went straight up. Very different from the Empire State Building. So to take those towers down, you needed an aircraft full of fuel, right? Crazy. I don't think crazy is the word. I apologize for that. More coming up next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on this special edition, the September 11th edition of the Kevin Miller program, KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning here, September 11th. Wondering what you were doing and have we learned the lessons of this tragedy? But you hear the sounds of this area. You hear what people are going through. And, you know, what is the definition of courage? What is the definition of overcoming fear? You know, songs immortalize it. You know, we're with you to the end. But when it's actually really the end, how many rise to the occasion? How many people don't have a choice to do that, right? And yet they do. And their relatives and their descendants and their loved ones live on. A lot of lessons to be learned. Our charge here is that when you see a kid, maybe bebopping away, maybe texting in church, maybe playing a video game, or someone says, yeah, that's just another day. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. You know that, and I know that. The very thing that the least that we can do to honor these people is to do what? Is to go in and say, no, I was there. I saw it on television. I saw our country's reaction and the brave men and women who went into harm's way, not only on that day, but in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in places that we don't even know because they're so special. God bless them. KIDO Talk Radio, a little traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Thank you very much, Larry. And we've been, again, hearing the sounds of that area, of that day, to reinforce the point. It was a silent night, was it not?
You say you'll never forget where you were when you heard the news on September 11th, 2001. Neither will I. I was on the 110th floor in a smoke-filled room with a man who called his wife to say goodbye. I held his fingers steady as he dialed. I gave him the piece to say, "Honey, I'm not going to make it. But it's okay. I'm ready to go." I was with his wife when he called as she fed breakfast to their children. I held her up as she tried to understand his words. And as she realized he wasn't coming home that night. I was in the stairwell of the 23rd floor when a woman cried out to me for help. "I've been knocking on the door of your heart for 50 years. I said, "Of course, I'll show you the way home. Only believe in me now." I was at the base of the building when the priest ministered to the injured and devastated souls. I took him home to tend his flock in heaven. He heard my voice and answered. I was on all 4 of those planes, in every seat, with every prayer. I was with the crew as they were overtaken. I was in the very hearts of the believers there, comforting and assuring them that their faith has saved them. I was in Texas, Kansas, London. I was standing next to you when you heard the terrible news. Did you sense me? I want you to know that I saw every face. I knew every name, though not all know me. Some met me for the first time on the 86th floor. Some sought me with their last breath. Some couldn't hear me calling to them through the smoke and flames. "Come to me, this way, take my hand." Some chose, for the final time, to ignore me. But I was there. I did not place you in the tower that day. You may not know why, but I do. However, if you were there in that explosive moment in time, would you have reached for me? September 11th, 2001 was not the end of the journey for you. But someday your journey will end, and I'll be there for you as well. Seek me now while I may be found. Then, at any moment, you know you're ready to go. I will be in the stairwell of your final moments. Remember, I love you.
You know, that's why it's such a privilege to be with you. You won't hear that on any major media outlet. I'm sure Glenn and Sean both launching their national shows on that day. Thank you. Thank you for loving America. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for all that you do that may not get recognized. Thank you for doing the right thing. Thank you for your love and your patience and your American perseverance. Those actions are easier said than done. We thank you for joining us. May God bless you. May God bless America and all those that serve and have given on this day and every day. We pray for you. God bless.